happening now. We'd like to welcome our viewers from across North America and around the world. This is the EdTech Situation Room, episode 338 for Wednesday, October 23rd, 2024. My name is Wes Fryer. I am coming to you from Charlotte, North Carolina, where I continue to teach media literacy and STEM, web design, coding, and computer applications at Providence Day School in Uptown Charlotte. And I'm joined, as always, by the amazing Dr. Jason Neiffer, who I've said for years he's the EdTech Yoda of the North. But the AI, what's above Yoda and Jedi? That's not a Sith Lord, that's on the good side.
The Sith Lord of AI here in beautiful Missoula, Montana. Yeah, good evening. I am the executive director of the Montana Digital Academy, which is, and I'm repping the brand tonight, the state virtual school located on the beautiful University of Montana campus right here in Missoula, Montana, the fabulous capital of Western Montana. I don't know if I can say that or not. Kalispell might be mad, but great to be spending the evening with you tonight. Lots going on in the world, as it turns out. And I will say, if you are struggling to keep up with the AI stuff, and I spend a full third of my professional time on AI now, not just the exploration of it, but dealing with the ramifications of constantly available large language models. You're not the only one. I find that when I go and search for links for our weekly shows, there's stuff that I missed completely because there's so much that it's really hard to kind of keep up with. And so, again, if that's you, it's all good, because it is a really, really challenging set of circumstances and evolutions to keep up with. But Dr. Fryer, I don't think people are here tonight to hear us talk about how much news there is. What is this EdTech Situation Room business all about?
Well, for 337 shows, we have talked about the technology news and parsed it through the educational lens, if you will. So we are here to talk about the last week in tech news. It has really become an AI-dominated show. You can check out our links at edtechsr.com/links. We want to say a hearty welcome to Peggy George, who was able to join us, even though we are changing our time a little bit, an hour earlier today. And, in addition to talking about the tech news and how it impacts education, we'll probably rant about a few things. It's likely, but we'll also share some Geeks of the Week. And, I think this is absolutely my most important way to process change, specifically technological change, but just, cultural change. And boy, it's so important to do. And I know that probably everyone's listening to this is probably a podcast listener, but podcasts play a huge, huge role in the ways that I learn and the ways that I process things. But being able to do this live with Jason is huge. We had another live viewer. So if you are joining us live tonight, either on YouTube or Facebook, please type in the chat, tell us hi if you can, and feel free to throw any questions in. We will absolutely not get to all of our articles tonight, but if you want to try to go to those at edtechsr.com/links, we would welcome that. And we will be dropping those links into our chat, which will also be part of our archive that we will be having on both YouTube and Facebook. Sadly, we're not yet up, Jason, to 100 Facebook followers on our page, but we can encourage people to follow that page. Once we hit 100, we'll be able to live stream again to that page. So I think that was a moderation decision that Facebook made this past summer. So was not targeting us, but it affected us nonetheless. Where would you like to begin tonight, sir?
Well, why don't we go ahead and do the non-AI news, because that seems to be interesting enough without the AI pieces. And is there a particular place you want to start?
Oh, hey, let's start with a fun one. So, Ars Technica today reports that San Francisco is going to be finally giving up the floppy disks in the subway. So the headline is San Francisco to pay $212 million to end reliance on 5.25-inch floppy disks. And so it turns out in 1998, the San Francisco ATCS, which is the automatic train control system, was set up that requires 5.25-inch floppy disks. And for a variety of reasons, they have remained reliant upon this. They are switching over to a Japanese company that controls the bullet trains in Japan. It is going to be a 5-generation jump when they go to the new system. it is just kind of amazing to think that these things are in place. I know that the FCC, I'm trying to say Federal Trade Commission, the air traffic controllers actually switched their system a few years back, and it was like a COBOL based system, and they were going to something newer, and it was there's a little nervousness, right, whenever you talk about transportation safety, and especially things like that, tracking all the aircraft that are in the air. But I haven't heard news, and so I think that one went pretty well. And anyway, this is focused in San Francisco. But when is the last time you put a 5.25-inch floppy disk into a computer, Dr. Neiffer?
That's a really great question. And in fact, it's funny because the article talks about how this system was installed in 1998. And I know that I was firmly in the 3.5-inch disk era of my floppy use. And in fact, if anything, I'm thinking that, well, I remember I did get my first flash drive in 2003, I think. And it was a little tiny one, like 100 megabytes or something, but it seemed so amazing. As I recall, it wasn't cheap either. But it was just such an improvement over having to put things on a floppy disk, or worse, burning to a CD-ROM. I remember there were several times in my early teaching career where I had a big PowerPoint presentation. There was really no means to send it over the internet then. And I would I would have to burn it to a CD to get it back and forth from school. And that's not the way you want to do these kinds of things. Absolutely, for sure. And so, to install a 5.25-inch floppy drive in 1998 means you were already adopting a obsolete technology at that point.
Yeah, my class at the Air Force Academy was the first to receive computers with 3.5-inch floppies. We were running DOS 3.1. There was, Windows 3.1 was what we got, but we were still using DOS. Anyway, it was a smaller floppy, but that really reminds me too of I think, what did I post about it? Like just a media hostage situation where you don't want your media to get trapped on a format that you can no longer access. And I do have some of those 3.5-inch floppies in our garage. I know I pulled some things off, in the 90s, and I've got zip disks that there's no way I can play those. I used to have my blue and white Yosemite G3 Mac, and that was one of many computers that we left in Oklahoma. But anyway, just be thinking about what you got that is valuable, and especially if it's photographs, especially if it's movies, if it's audio recordings, any kind of media. I need a blog post about it, but for a while this last semester, maybe it was the summer, my Facebook account, I lost access to it because they had some kind of new check of a post, and I didn't find out until it was finally restored, thanks to a friend's, child's spouse who works for Meta that was able to put in this form for me. It was just crazy that it was something I had posted 10 years ago that was like flagged that, this seems to violate, it wasn't something terrible. But anyway, I've had multiple people on different platforms, contact me because I had shared about this and that I had it resolved. Oh, we lost all of our photos. All of our photos of our baby were on Facebook and we can't get to Facebook. And boy, folks, it is just not a good idea to put all of your eggs in a basket. So anyway, that goes beyond this article, but those are the kinds of thoughts that it spawns in me. And I think that we can all probably relate to this idea of changing media and the fact that we need to make sure that we can get it on a current system, which basically means digitizing it and putting it in the cloud somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. And even duplicating cloud back down too. That,
sure.
I have general trust in Google Drive, and I guess the other, I finally demoted my Dropbox account after a long time of not pulling anything out of there. I moved everything from my Dropbox to my Google Drive, which I now have expanded storage opportunities in because it came for free with a Chromebook. So that's something that I've been doing as well. But I have all that stuff backed up locally. So I have to keep a network attached storage or a NAS drive on my network to be able to do that, because it is a lot of stuff. It's about about 500 gigs of just cruft. And, I should go through it someday, but I literally found, Wes, PowerPoints from my first year of teaching in 1997 in the Dropbox drive.
Oh, that's
So
awesome. That's
yeah,
awesome.
and again, terrible PowerPoints too, I might add. But a lot of the early day stuff was there. But I like preserving that stuff, if for no other reason than it reminds me how far we've come.
That's right. And I probably have some video and some, right, probably 640 by 480, terrible resolution images. But yeah, the beginning of my teaching career in the mid 90s, 95 and 96. So anyway, there are places where you can get those things digitally resurrected. And we were able, I don't have it beside me now, but I mentioned a reel-to-reel tape, that there's a place that actually does have a player, and we were able to recapture this recorded audio from 1971 or 72 or something like that. It's possible, but NASA's had these issues as well with the different technologies they've used over time, and saying they have this film, but they don't have a player for it. Yes, as Peggy said, a great trip down memory lane for those of us that are a little bit on the older side. So,
Well, and it's so funny too, from another standpoint, that I do think that I've always kind of suspected, and I've seen internet like YouTube and TikTok videos about how there are people that go in and buy, large caches of old 5 1/4. I believe that 8-inch floppies are still occasionally needed, and then 3.5-inch discs. All those different floppy sizes, that with the amount of hardware that still runs these platforms, or these storage platforms, there's a huge market for them. But I've always suspected that at some point, especially with a 3.5-inch floppy, that someone would have invented like a floppy that has a flash something in it that could survive the same thing without having to have the actual media, yada yada yada. Because as I recall, 3.5-inch discs and 5 1/4-inch discs failed at a really high rate, and I was victim of that quite a few times when that was still the case. But pretty interesting that that the stuff is still necessary and around.
absolutely. Here's another quick one. This one is about a Zoom hack, which is a little scary. This is from the PT Leader, which is not a publication which I am generally reading and subscribed to, but this is in Port Townsend, Washington, and the headline is "Zoom Hack Derails Quilcene School Board's LGBTQ plus books decision." I actually copied the article into ChatGPT and I said summarize. So the October 16th meeting was set to discuss a resolution on book banning LGBTQ plus library books, interrupted by a Zoom hack that broadcast pornography, leading to the shutdown of the broadcast. And the article itself says that their IT guy wasn't able to figure out how the person who is in the public comment time was able to take control, but they were. And so they just had to shut the whole thing down. So that's a reminder about how, even Zoom, as a very secure and very well-known platform, has vulnerabilities, and you need to have, contingency plans in place for what you might do in that kind of a situation. But I'm thankful that I never, during COVID, and I'm not really aware of anybody at our school who, had Zoom bombing and these other things. But the security features and stuff like that are a part of these tools, they are important. We need to be careful with the sharing of them. I think the only thing, one time I was joining a friend who was using Ustream, and he accidentally shared the join link, I think, on Twitter.
Yeah.
And then there were some folks that jumped on that shouldn't have been there. And this was a class, and just you got to be careful with those links. And the same thing is true for us here with StreamYard, because every session that I will send Jason. And by the way, are you doing the Mastodon link, or are you doing the text link? Because I'm sending it both ways.
Mostly the Mastodon link.
Okay. So anyway, just making sure that you're sending it securely. Mastodon, interestingly, does not encrypt. But once the show is over, it's not that big a deal, and it's not being sent in the open. So speaking of which, we have a few folks joining us. We're going up three viewers, 4 viewers. Unfortunately, the chat does not work for the way that I'm streaming to my Facebook channel, but it does for YouTube. So anyway, join us on YouTube if you would like to participate in the live chat and join Peggy there.
Okay, why don't I do one more security article, and then I do think we should talk about data caps, and then kind of jump into this week's AI news. So this is a Vox article from today. A world without passwords is in sight. Thanks to passkeys, you may not need to remember a password ever again. And this is especially poignant in from the standpoint of security continues to be a huge issue, and I know. In a lot of cases that, when I hear especially hallway conversations with school administrators and IT folks, that a lot of times when systems are compromised, it's because a password ended up in a huge cache of passwords in a hacker forum somewhere on the internet. And if you reuse passwords or if you use simple passwords, it can lead to dire consequences for a school district. If someone gets a hold of private data, even if it's relatively low value data, it can still be used for a lot of shenanigans. And what is interesting about passkeys, and I've only basically started with passkeys because I didn't really understand them all that much. And so I'm going to actually do a very basic explanation for them for our audience that may not know. A passkey is basically an encrypted code that is passed between a trusted verifier, so like a password manager or the Google Password Manager or some other trusted software that you've set up with a third party. So as an example of this, my eBay account has a passkey now, and so I have to be signed in to my password manager, which is 1Password. And it recognizes that I have a passkey, and 1Password says, instead of entering a username and password, 1Password asks me, do you want to log into this website with your credential? And the credential is not a username and password. It's some sort of stored encrypted text that it trades back and forth with eBay to confirm my identity. And who knows what the future might look like in regards to, do we need to have a master password in the future? One could see that maybe a biometric could step into that. So you log into your password manager with a password or a biometric password, and then it deals with all of the individual websites. But I would say probably 10, 15 of my more frequently used services are set up with a passkey now. One of the reasons why I was so slow to adopt passkeys was that one of my Google accounts was telling me I could log in with a passkey, but I don't remember setting it up ever. So I don't know which device it was hooked to. I should go in and turn passkeys off and then turn them back on again to be able to reset that up. So if you are on the tech savvy side of things, I would suggest first and foremost, get a password manager. I think it's really important. My preferred one now is 1Password, although Android, Google's Android and Apple's iPhone OSs also have passkey support. So if you using those for password managers, you should be good to go. But I've been very happy with this. And the Vox article goes into some detail to say that in the relatively near future, we could have a world without passwords. And I think that's just a really good sign, I think, for security.
It reminds me of PGP back in the day. Did you do PGP? Pretty good privacy, yeah, because you had the public key and the private key, and I think this is the way encryption works. there's a private key that only you have, but then there's a public key that's joined to it. And so anyway, the link to the 1Password passkeys, I went ahead and dropped in. I have not pulled the trigger on this, and I probably should as well. There are just so many different sites now that are really pushing us to do this. And I think that, it reminds me also of my physical key, right? I have oh gosh, what's the name of it? I can't even remember. It has two sides. It has a USB-C and it has a YubiKey. Yep. And it's got a lightning side. And I actually got this a little before the USB-C had become a standard for iPhone and on laptops and everything, but it was coming. And I gave one to my sister for Christmas. I wonder if she's used it. I'll have to ask her. But I use it every day because I've got it connected to my Gmail account for school. And I teach in a PC lab now, 3 of my 4 classes. which is our esports gaming lab. They're incredibly fast gaming machines. But I log in and then, it asks me to sign in. And rather than tap on my phone or whatever, I just put my key in and tap it. So I think it's that same sort of thing that you are having control of your 1Password account or whatever your password manager is. And because you have control of that, just like a physical key, you're going to be able to use that token to say, yes, this is me. And compared to traditional passwords, which you have to have is unique and long, and each one's different. And I have, as Jason does, I know too, hundreds of passwords and login combinations. So yeah, I think that passkeys, with all the embrace that we have from these trusted folks like Google and 1Password, et cetera, they talk about in the 1Password page that they're not mainstream yet, but they're getting so much buzz. It really does seem like this is something the security community is encouraging us to do, and we probably should do. So I've just been hesitant to be an early adopter, just to kind of like wait a little bit, but it seems like maybe we've waited long enough. So,
oh, absolutely.
All right. Anything else before we jump into the AI world?
Yeah, let's talk about that data cap article that you posted.
Okay, this is from Ars Technica also today. Can you tell what website I visit before we start our show? Please ban data caps, internet users tell FCC. And so the FCC, as we know, takes open comment from the public, and net neutrality is something that we have talked about before. I think that's the issue that's probably drawn the most public feedback in the last 30 days. This topic of data caps has drawn the most. And basically, they're saying, like long distance, which we don't pay, per minute for long distance anymore. Same thing for data caps. And it's interesting. The Republican chair of the FCC, Nathan Symington, got roasted a lot for trying to make this analogy with coffee, saying, well, that's like offering free coffee refills. Well, that's just not going to be viable to do. And, a lot of people are posting, well, guess what? Internet service isn't like coffee. It's different. And there's a group that has posted this white paper arguing that data caps are good for you users and ISPs. And there's, more investment that happens for capital improvement and infrastructure expansion, et cetera, which, sounds just like something that an AT&T lobbyist would say. So FCC, the chair is listening to consumers. I would encourage folks, if you want to chime in on this, the policies of the FCC are important. They do have an impact. And it reports Comcast users unhappy with the extra fee. I mean, some of this is allegedly a real money grab by the service providers, and certainly service providers need to make money. But do they need to be, imposing basically arbitrary caps on utilization? This does remind me, Jason, I'm on my fiber network. We finally got fiber installed to our neighborhood. This it was the summer, but even fall, and I'm the first person in our whole neighborhood of like 200 and something folks that they said install. I signed up early, surprise, surprise, and it is lightning fast. I'm doing the 500 up and down, and it's cheaper than what I was paying for 300 down and like 30 up was what I was getting with the cable modem provider, I think, for more money. So it's pretty sweet. Yeah. And I need to post, I need to write a blog post and post on like, what is it, Nextdoor, and, have a positive post about it. So.
Yeah, it's funny because we have a fiber provider coming into Missoula for the first time, and there were other fiber providers, but they really didn't leave certain neighborhoods, in part because I think they were just aiming for businesses. But there is one finally coming to our neighborhood, and what's interesting about being in Missoula, it's not. I mean, we're a rural state, so we certainly don't have the providers that Spokane or Seattle, Portland, Eugene, Oregon might have. So there's not a ton of competition here. But what's also interesting about it is that the competition that is here isn't as universal as you might assume. So, for example, I don't want to talk about who the DSL provider is in Missoula, in part because I'm about to trash on them, but I was willing to move towards DSL in part because they had a faster service for more or for cheaper. And every time I get an email from them saying now available in your neighborhood, I would go and check in on the address, and the address would tell me that they have 1 megabit down. 1 megabit, which is slower than my DSL was when I first started with DSL, like in 1998, right? And so that was super frustrating to me because I just didn't really understand why that was the case. I even engaged with the DSL provider, who also is a local phone provider, and they just didn't have any good answers to the situation. But now there's a fiber provider, and it's funny, Wes. I will be paying cheaper. I did have to pay $50 to get on the list, which they'll refund me when the service starts. But it's 600 up, 600 down. It's the 600 up I'm most interested in because it's going to make joint Zoom calls. When I work at home, my wife has an office. She largely works at home right next to me, and although 10 megabits up should be more than enough to stream a couple of Zoom calls, we find that we're both on at the same time. One or both of the calls are compromised. So yeah, I'm excited about that too, and I'm excited to head in that direction.
The plans. Oh, this is interesting. Price for life. There was a 250 meg plan, and these are all asymmetric. So you're getting the same upload as download. It's unbelievable. We got fiber from AT&T in Oklahoma City about a year before we left, and it was just fantastic. And I mean, as an example, I upload the shows and upload videos, and it's just, I just want to do it from home now because it's so fast. But their plans, there's no longer a 250 meg plan with this Ripple fiber that we have. It's either 500 megs, the lowest plan, that's what we've got, or a gig or 2 gigs. And interesting, if you get either the 1 or the 2 gig, it has a price for life deal, which is really, really interesting. So I don't know what the pricing on that is, but yep, it's exciting. And I would encourage folks to, check and all this has to do with, I guess, zoning, and there's all kinds of things that this has to do with. There was a South African company that was here that was called Open Fiber, and then they got bought by Ripple Fiber. And anyway, I'm glad they finally came. But the other thing I'll say is that, as most of you probably know, Western North Carolina was absolutely devastated by Hurricane Helene, and there's still just huge recovery operations and things that are continuing to go on. There's areas still without, power and water, and it's just terrible. And one of the most important things that people needed was communications, because cell phone towers went down really quickly with these hurricane force winds. So one of the things that my wife and I definitely have on our wish list is a travel version of Starlink. I have not really heard about. I don't know if Jeff Bezos's alternative is available, and if it's equitable and is fast and good. I think I'd rather support Jeff's company than Elon's company. But Starlink has played a huge role, and being able to have that kind of resiliency of space-based connectivity. I think we will be getting that on our iPhones before too many years, and we talked about that on the show a few weeks ago. But yes, connectivity is essential, and fiber to the last mile, to fiber to the home. That is the dream. So here we are, living the dream, Dr. Neiffer, and I'm glad you guys are possibly getting some fiber there in Missoula as well.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, I'm going to talk some AI.
Shall we do some AI?
Yes, we need to dive right into it. So please illumine us.
Sure. Well, let me start with this one because it's a pretty stunning development. So Anthropic, the makers of Claude, the kind of alternative AI model, that it's interesting because I have talked about a couple of times that I was considering canceling my Claude subscription and just utilizing it occasionally using the API. So in other words, bulk buying access to it and using it with a local model, and they keep pulling me back in. And they did yesterday announce that they have an upgraded Claude 3.5 Sonnet, which is their model, that it's their headline model, or maybe frontier model, as some people call it. And I played with it for a couple of minutes yesterday. There was nothing noticeably better, but also I don't use a Claude enough to be able to say it's better. And it felt more responsive than the last few times I had used the model. But that's not the interesting piece. They announced a public beta availability of something that they simply call computer use, and you get it via their API. And basically, it has the ability to, for lack of a better way of putting it, use your computer on your behalf, right? And it's not quite as elegant yet that you can just turn on Claude and walk away and it will do your work for you. But they showed a pretty great demo as part of their release yesterday, where they had someone that was they recorded some actions in a live environment, and I think they were filling out a form at the time. And then after Claude learned about how to do it, it was able to autonomously do that on its own. On your desktop computer. So in other words, controlling your computer for you. And what is stunning to me about this is that there is so much there's just so much cruft in 2024. And I could talk about it in general, but just think about all the form filling out that happens in schools in 2024. And it seems like this will be a futuristic feeling solution where your computer can autonomously use an AI agent, as it's oftentimes called, to do some of this formulaic work for you. And I must say, so far, at least the demo videos I've seen two, maybe three of them in the last 24 hours, it is pretty darn impressive. And this is exactly what I think could be a real game changer for schools beyond the teaching and learning component, which for sure is impacted by AI. I'm really excited about the prospect of autonomous agents. I knew it was coming at some point, but the fact that Claude has an API now that third-party tools can pull into is pretty interesting stuff.
So there's got to be a word for this, and this is a milestone, but this is the term I'd love to know is like it's a milestone in trusting AI. Because when you say, hey, and we've seen Google do these demos, Sundar Pichai at Google I/O, right? Saying, hey, make my reservation, call this restaurant, turning over some work to the AI. The demo, and I did watch the video that's on the link that we shared. It's going over here to this information on the computer because it's been given access. It's going to have, this is where Google is going to be interesting when they're doing this, not Anthropic, right? But they're able to go grab this information, move it over here and put it in, and hopefully they're putting the right information in. And what are the stakes of that, right? But when it comes to like healthcare and all kinds of things that have higher stakes, there is going to be a process I think we're going to go through both individually and as a society, trusting the machines to be sharing the right information, ultimately making the right decisions. And so there's really low stakes stuff right now, like, oh, it's filling out this little Google form for me, or it's making my dinner reservation tonight. But move this into the arena of healthcare and things that are affecting life and death, and also service providers, right? Doctors and nurses and hospital staff. I mean, when we saw CrowdStrike, it wasn't a hack, it was a CrowdStrike upgrade debacle, that happened this summer, when all of these Windows machines were rendered useless, and hospitals. Our middle daughter was actually in surgery, coming out of surgery, and in the middle of the night they had this attack, and the nurse couldn't access her vitals because the computer wouldn't connect at all. And so anyway, there's all sorts of vulnerabilities we have, but I think it's a huge milestone. I would encourage everybody to watch the video. And hopefully we'll discover, and you all can share too, or Jason and I'll find out what are the words for this, because it's a process of trusting the machines and trusting AI. And I think it's a big milestone. So I have continued to use Anthropic for some of my book analysis when I'm, doing chapters and want to have it, give me summaries and key terms and discussion questions and stuff like that. The tools just keep on getting more and more powerful and capable. And this is a pretty substantial qualitative change. It's not
Yeah.
just, oh, the writing's better. It's like, wow, now it can fill out a form and click on the screen where I want it to click. And there's going to be all kinds of applications, both good and bad, that people are going to think to use this for.
Yep, absolutely. And related to that, another article from today. This is from PC Magazine today. Katie Irwin reports that Claude AI can now control your PC, which is prompting concern from security experts. And one of the things that is absolutely true and has to be a part of this discussion no matter what is that, for all the amazing things that these can do for good, these powers are available for not good. And this particular article talks about there are a lot of benefits to this, but security experts believe that it could increase cyber attacks. It could create bot farms that do or increase the opportunity for organized hackers to get into systems. Sensitive data is a part of all these models, and whether it could be used by either potentially bad actors or even law enforcement in a way that none of us are comfortable with, the risks just increase. And I am not a doomer on AI. I do my P score is probably in the lower 20s. That's down from 40%. Say 6 months ago, because I do feel like there's a lot of smart people that are working really hard to make this a better process. But I'd be lying if I said that stuff like this is not only incredibly interesting to me, but more importantly, it's threatening, right? And I do want to mention one other thing, and I was looking for the post and I couldn't find it because I was going to share it with my team at work today. But Stephan Bouchard, who we've talked about before, he's a prominent member of the larger debate community, and he's also, I think his LinkedIn profile says he's an AI policy consultant now. He's still coaching debate too, but he posted the other day that there's issues in New Zealand with kids that are using, I think it was smart glasses, but he was talking about how that AI soon enough is going to be in your eyes and ears, right? And he was even talking about the prospect of kind of almost a Google Glass style display in contact lenses where you would never know that it's there. And if AI is a part of that, that becomes a really interesting, maybe a superpower, but it also calls into question an awful lot of educational practices. And again, I want to be clear about this. I'm not happy that a lot of traditional practices are relegated useless by this, in part because I am concerned about what replaces it, right? We haven't done enough work in the last 25 years to move away from a largely knowledge-based education system. But, and I've been a part of that too, I should add, but we're, to add insult to injury, not only is the nature of knowledge changing because of these tools, to lose a lot of the levers we've been pulling on in informal education for, the better part of a century is going to mean some disruption for sure.
A couple of thoughts about that. I will pull this article from last week, which we didn't have time to mention, but Anthropic's team, the headline is from ZDNet on October 18th. Anthropic flags AI's potential to, quote, automate sophisticated, destructive cyber attacks. And so they revised their safety guidelines. And basically their team, which is very focused, I think, genuinely on safe and ethical AI. They talk about being a constitutional AI platform. They have updated their AI safety level standards, ASL, technical and operational safeguards. And it says that they're going to be engaging with the cyber operations community to both enhance and mitigate cyber threats. And it doesn't spell out exactly what it is, but basically a sophisticated destructive cyber attack is something that would be devastating. It would take down critical infrastructure. And yeah, we've known this, but this was a big announcement last week that the same company that just developed this, used the computer technology, Anthropic, was citing. So The other thing I'd say is, I'm teaching coding. I love to teach coding. The kids that I have this semester, it's just, I don't know, the mix of kids always, influences the experience in the room. But I really, really have some sharp kids. And today we were switching over from Scratch to Minecraft and make code, and we did an activity on pseudocode. And pseudocode is when you sort of write in more plain English, what are the steps that you're going to try to do, and then you convert that to your real code. But I think that AI is really going to render those individuals who are able to articulate computational thinking for an algorithm that they want to have perform actions. It is absolutely an incredible superpower. And one of my personal goals, you've gotten an API key with ChatGPT, Jason? And
ChatGPT, Claude, I have some open source ones for Grok. Yeah, I've got about a half dozen or so.
And you've created a few applications that are able to work with those APIs?
Yeah, I mostly use wrappers, and so there's a couple of examples of them. Anything LLM, which we talked about on the show, that's the one that allows you to either use an API key, or you can run local models on your computer. Olama is one example of that. And there's
the wrapper basically is using the remote LLM, but it's just sort of running it on your machine, sort of like a browser.
Yeah. Another example is I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's Misty, MSTY. It's another piece of downloadable software where you can plug in a variety of different APIs and use it locally. And then there's a web-based one called Typing Mind that I bought a subscription to a couple of months back that I'll use on a Chromebook for that exact purpose. But, and it's funny because I did read an article last night that talked a little bit about what power users are doing with or that a power user play you could do in running one of these wrappers instead of buying advanced versions of all these different models he's argued was the better way to go. And in fact, we're working on getting through procurement right now, but our organization is likely to license the Teams version of ChatGPT for about half of our office users, the ones that will use the advanced versions. But for everyone else, we're just going to, use one of these open source wrappers like Misty and just have it installed on people's local machines and then plug in by an API and monitor its usage.
And just pay fractions of a penny for each query, and that'll be more affordable. I don't want to totally derail us with the question, but go ahead, and then I'll have a question.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I know is that for the last 4 weeks, I have shared my API key with about a half dozen or so of my coworkers, and we plugged it into some of the interesting Chrome plugins and also a wrapper or two, and they've been hammering it pretty hard. And my bill for the last 4 weeks has been $4. So and that's, I mean, Claude's a good example of that. You can buy a Claude API key, and it's going to give you a lot of the functionality and would give you the ability, if you were a developer, to develop some cool stuff. But I'm not a developer, so I like the Claude interface as an example.
Yeah, the Amazon S3 Cloud and other Amazon cloud tools are similar because, I mean, unless something goes viral and it's crazy, I mean, I have all our podcasts and all the podcasts I've been making since 2005 on that cloud, and the bill's always just, less than $10 a month, $5. It's really small. Again, I don't want to completely derail, but I have to ask this question because this is a goal of mine. I want to create some connections to some databases or even just a Google Sheet. And I think I talked to ChatGPT about this, and it was talking about a Google script, and I just haven't sat down to play with that. But, being able to write data, being able to access data and then write data, like I used to do with FileMaker, back in the day, but not doing it with like MySQL or whatever. There's a bunch of ways to do that. Are you all playing with that at the Academy with AI?
We are, and there's a couple of ways that we're looking at that. The first one is Google itself, has a ton of platforms that either lay on top of or integrated into the Google Workspace suite, and we right now all of our data over time lives in Google spreadsheets, and then we use their visualizations and reporting to be able to report that out. And we would like to be able to add in. I'm assuming that the Gemini would be the way to do this. We want to add in some functionality to where we could start querying our data in that way. And I know that and this, I could be a little out of my depths here, but I know that for Google, a Google spreadsheet is just as good as a database for simple queries, right? So you don't have to learn a database to be able to do it, but you get to a point where maybe you want your stuff in one of their industrial database products, which for our amount of use, I would imagine is going to be relatively less. But the other way that I've actually developed some interesting kind of proof of concepts around is to use one of the kind of connector apps. And the two that I know of, one of them is called make.com. And we talked about this one earlier this year. It was my Geek of the Week, I believe. But that's the one that that's the one where you can plug in, or the way I learned about it was that I found a YouTube video that said, make 1,000 posts in 20 minutes for YouTube. And I was able to, learn about how to plug in a ChatGPT, a Perplexity API, a Claude API, and then also pull things off of a Google spreadsheet to process, right? So every time I detected something new there, and make.com has a free tier that allows you to do exactly that. And the tool that I'm building right now as also a proof of concept is I've been working with school administrators of Montana, which is the administrator advocacy group in Montana. And as it turns out, they'd been pitched from some vendors a Danielson feedback bot where you could upload your raw notes from an observation, and it would turn it into Danielson keyed feedback. Yeah. Well, I said at the time, I think I could probably develop that in a long weekend. Well, I know how much it will take to develop it. It would take me 6 hours. In 6 hours, I went from a kind of proof of concept on the back of a napkin, I think literally a back of a napkin, and turned it into a functional, a custom GPT. Well, the next stage of that is that and again, I'm just trying to teach myself stuff here, is that now I've got an almost functional make.com script that all you have to do is put the raw notes in a Google Doc and drag it to a folder, and it automatically appends a teacher's log over time with the feedback that you could just copy and paste into an email or actually go over with a teacher during an observation. And so, and make.com has integrations with hundreds and hundreds of different pieces. And I know you have something to say, Wes. One more quick thing. The other tool that also does something like this is nhn.io, N8N. I'm sorry, it's N8N.io. And it's also a workflow automation software that plugs into, gazillions of different pieces. That will also plug into a local LLM if you're running something on your computer. So, I have experimented a lot with this.
This is so great. And so I'm dropping these links into the chat. I'm dropping them into our Google Doc. I've got to write a blog post about it, but one of the things about teaching at independent schools, private schools, and this has been true in Oklahoma and here in North Carolina, this is my 10th year, is we have these comments that you write at different times for kids. And so probably no surprise, I utilized ChatGPT. I was able to download my entire Canvas gradebook, which has every comment that I've sent to students, and I use the comments in Canvas extensively with assignments. I was able to upload a PDF of a reflection document that I asked all students to respond to, my skills, and then I was able to use this prompt, and I got absolutely fantastic draft comments that I then was able to use and modify, and hours and hours of time savings. I mean, it is just, in fact, I should write an article about the number of hours that both our elementary, our middle, and our high school teachers spend when we have to do these comments. And I am sure that some people are spending over 10 hours doing these things. I was less than 2, but it was just it's just such a game changer. But it's not this whole thing of like, well, just write me a comment for Joey. No, it's like, here's my data, here are my skills, here's what the student has done, and then here's how I want this to be written. And so anyway, it's just incredibly powerful, and it's just going to get better from
Yeah.
here. So,
And saving time, yeah, that's interesting. But I still think that the better goal here is better outputs, right? And if it takes me 20 minutes to write some light comments or 5 minutes to write much deeper comments, I want to take the 5 minutes to write much deeper comments, right?
oh, yeah.
And not fluffy ones too, right? And that's where and that's a lot of what I've talked about in with AI in curriculum development, is that the point here is not to quicken the pace. That's nice, right? That's cool, but your point is better output, right? And that's where the notions that people people will be replaced by AI. People using AI will be replaced by AI, because the superpowers it gives you are really quite extraordinary and lead to better outcomes ultimately for students.
Well, I agree. This is that whole idea of SAMR and get to the
Yeah.
transformative model. But I mean, let's not underestimate the value of time savings. I mean, I saw
Oh, yeah, true.
one of our math teachers at the coffee shop Sunday, and he was there all day. Or maybe I think he changed locations. But I mean, the amount of time that's being spent on these things is kind of crazy. Okay, I would like to do this Ars Technica article about this chatbot and teen suicide.
Yeah.
This is Ars Technica on the 23rd. I had not heard about this. The headline is "Chatbot that caused teen suicide is now more dangerous for kids," lawsuit says. And so evidently this had funding from Google, but it was not, Google wasn't running it. It's character AI. And so now it has added more guardrails, but there was a 14-year-old child who used this and basically became addicted to it. The parent tried to get him to stop. They shot themselves with a gun eventually. But this says that the chatbot presented itself as a human, not as a robot, presented itself as a counselor. And then they developed a romantic attachment, and there was all kinds of sexualized conversations. There's screenshots and all this. But I mean, it's kind of crazy that, I mean, it's a Wild West. It's a Wild West. They did have, I think, 12 or 13 as an age requirement. It was 12. It said you could be 12 and use it. And now it says 17 plus. But even that, we know, kids bypass it. So I think, maybe in the summer, it's been a number of weeks ago, I shared I don't know if it was BBC. It was from the BBC. It wasn't Tech Tent, but it was about in China, how popular these chatbots are. And I don't know to the degree to which any of you are talking with AIs. It says that I think in February, this character AI added this two-way, audio talking. So you're not just typing, you're talking. Well, I am talking now to ChatGPT almost every day on the ChatGPT iPhone app. Not a lot of people that I'm running around with know about this. They're like, what are you doing? And it can be a powerful demo, but this is definitely a dark side of AI. It seems a bit crazy that this thing without apparent guardrails was just put out there for 12-year-olds and older to jump on. And I think I've toyed with the idea of doing some kind of parent university. I used to do these when I was tech director at our school for 4 years. Oh my gosh, this is definitely something parents need to be aware of. If your child has unfettered access to an app store, it is likely that they can find some kind of an AI chatbot. And while that could be innocuous and certainly not lead to a horrible, horrible outcome and headline like this, there is just all kinds of stuff that's going on with these tools, and they're incredibly powerful. And I also think they're very unwieldy. And so even though the developers who have created them, there's unintended consequences, I certainly would not imagine that the creators of character AI would have foreseen this kind of an outcome. So it remains to be seen what this lawsuit is going to result in, but it certainly points to some real dangers that are out there. And while Jason and I don't like to be the, the doomers, as you say, we want to talk frankly about technology, and you cannot talk about AI and just talk about the positive side and do it justice. I think you have to talk about these negative potentials and why guardrails are in place, and why, we want there to be some guardrails and some protections, and arguably some regulation at some point, because there really isn't any meaningful regulation that is reining this in at this point.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, you got time for, we're at 6 minutes, so we got time for maybe a couple articles, and then we got a geek of the weekend.
Yeah, let's. Apple dropped something today, and I will tell you that I'm hoping next week that there is new Macs released. That seems to be the rumor. I don't have any articles for that tonight, but Mark Gurman at Bloomberg has been hinting pretty strongly that all the signs, and Mark Gurman is about as good as you're going to get of an Apple rumor journalist, really good sources, and is very careful about what he claims. But Gurman is reporting the next week's the week, but and I'm in the market for a new MacBook Pro next week. So, but what I would also say is that I did download the newest beta version of iOS 18.2, and that is the one where a lot more of the Apple Intelligence features are now available. And I will say, I like everything on 18.1, which hasn't been released publicly. I think that happens next week if you're not the kind of person that installs betas. But it does have direct ChatGPT access. And earlier today, when I started playing with it, Siri, if Siri can't do what you want it to do, it will ask if you want to use ChatGPT. And
yes.
And I think Siri is already better in iOS 18, which has some Apple Intelligence components to it. But I am very excited about what that means. And, the number of times I get told I can't do that, or not on this device, or I do think a lot of development time went into Siri for iOS 18.2, and I am really excited to see where that goes next.
I'm going to put the link to that the Craig Federighi article that you dropped in that says that Apple's concerned about turning real photos into fantasy.
Yeah.
Apple is allowing for a cleanup of photos, not the outright insertion of different AI objects and things like that, but being able to use your voice to manipulate things. I think Adobe is doing that too. I need to play more with some of the Adobe tools, but I think that the capability of using our phone, this is where it really starts to get mainstream, is when and this is why Federighi's talking in this article that Apple wants to be real careful with this, because there's so many people, there's millions and millions of people that are using the iPhone. So when these tools become mainstream with the iPhone or with Android, that really does reach and touch so many more people. And so being able to access the smarts of ChatGPT, I think it's massive. And I'm very, very happy at this point to see Apple do it, because Siri's just been very, very frustrating. And I know you've purchased some Apple smart speakers. I mean, I use my phone in the morning in the bathroom. I'm getting ready, and I just talk to Siri and get it to play songs, continue a podcast, be hands free, and so being able to access ChatGPT, I've been wanting that. So what I actually want, because I've made this investment in Google smart speakers, is to be able to do that through my Google speakers. So I don't think that Google is going to do that. I think it's going to be Gemini, but if Notebook LM is any kind of barometer, Gemini's getting pretty good too. So, but this is exciting for us as Apple users, I think.
Yep, absolutely. And, and I like Apple's AI strategy here, that they're just sliding in the tools where they make the most sense. I will say that I updated the betas on my M1 Mac machines, and so I've had the writing tools available to me for some time now, and it's just there on the right click. All you have to do is bring it up and select something, and we'll help you rewrite or do a starter paragraph on something. And I'm still convinced I don't think these tools belong in the most novice of learners, or at least not in an unlimited way, because I think there's something to learning stuff, right? But the bottom line is that for someone that is just trying to be productive, I think these tools are absolutely killer, and change a lot about I like to use the term knowledge work a lot, but knowledge work will be impacted pretty substantially.
I'll drop this one in as well, and then we probably better geek of the week it. You put this one in from The Verge that Canva has a shiny new text-to-image generator. This is from October 22nd in The Verge. And this is huge because we're using Canva in all my, well, not as much in my coding class, but definitely in my media literacy classes and in my web design class. And I'm excited about this. I think that students need to have access to an image generator. Flint AI is the AI tool that our students are using. It's all documented, and teachers, IT department, we can see everything that the kids are doing. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what kind of guidelines we get from this. But I really want my kids to be able to have some access to an AI text to image generator. But boy, does that ever bring up a lot of issues, right? Digital citizenship. Hello. Do we need to talk about that? Yes, we do.
Yeah. And I would also add too, the interesting thing about Canva, and we haven't talked much about the Canva drama in past episodes, but they were poised to dramatically increase the cost for professional users. I think doubling the cost, I believe, at one point, and then they announced a couple of weeks back that for existing users, they are not going to push the price increases, and so you can keep your price for a while. And I am a pro user in a personal account, even though I have access to the very advanced functionality education education edition. I do have enough work outside of my education world that I don't mind spending that $10 a month to get the pro account. But what I didn't know was that as part of that text image generator, it's because Canva bought Leonardo AI, which is a pretty well respected AI engine for images. And so the fact that these are, I always thought that the Canva text image engine wasn't very good, but now with Leonardo AI involved, and I've never purchased an advanced version of that, I just use the free version, it's pretty darn good. And then I would also note for the record as well that if you are a Canva education user, so you signed up through your school account, you also now have free access to the Affinity library. So Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, Affinity Publisher, these are alternatives to Photoshop, Illustrator, and the document producer for Adobe. I was going to say PageMaker, but that hasn't been around for a good decade or two. So, but you can now, with your education account, download those and to your desktop, Mac or PC, and they are. I would say that if you are a super duper Adobe
Acrobat, maybe.
No, it's not Acrobat. It's the equivalent of InDesign
InDesign, yeah.
Yeah. So and for most of what you would probably do with advanced editors, it's going to work just fine, and that's just now available for free. So with an education account.
I don't know how many other folks this might affect, but one of the things we just discovered in the last couple of weeks was that when our students use the link in our Canvas, this is not to confuse, we have Canvas, our LMS, and Canva, the design studio. There's a link in Canva because we're integrated, and when the students click that, it automatically goes to their educational account, which is full featured, and it has all the pro features, and it's wonderful. So that's all really, really good stuff. And that Verge article that we put in has a video called Droptober 2024, and so it has lots of details about those Canva updates, and I'm going to be checking that out as well as probably setting up my passkey and 1Password after we finish our show tonight. Awesome. Well, Dr. Neiffer, do you have any geeks of the week this week?
Yeah, I do have a quick one I wanted to share. I am a tinkerer. I mean, I apologize to my wife occasionally because I do end up buying quite a few little tech gadgets here or there. But I wanted to share a video that I have used very recently. Corporate PCs purchased during the pandemic are now just flooding eBay, so you can buy a pretty beefy PC, laptop or desktop computer for next to nothing. But one of the things that I have created is a Windows 11 Chrome OS hybrid laptop that I've stacked out with a terabyte of SSD storage and 64 gigabytes of RAM, none of which are required to run Windows or Chrome OS. And then I used this video that I'm sharing today, which allows you to install Chrome OS, not Chrome OS Flex, Chrome OS with the Android store or Android Play Store as a dual boot on a computer. And so it creates a surprisingly a great experience. You put all that RAM in there, and all of these machines run super duper well. But this is my Dell laptop that I purchased for under $100 on eBay. I then spent another $80 stacking the RAM, and then another $80 putting in a 1 terabyte SSD into here. And now it is not only a super fast Windows machine for the occasional times I need Windows. When I don't need Windows, it allows me to run Chrome OS, which is amazing on the hardware. So, again, nerdy weekend project, but if you're someone that likes to tinker, or if you are a Mac person and you want to have a really inexpensive and yet really fast Chromebook / Windows machine for whatever you may need those things for, that's a way to do it pretty economically.
Fantastic. And my Geeks of the Week, first off, Renee DiResta has a fantastic book that she published in the last 6 months called Invisible Rulers, The People Who Turn Lies into Reality. It is absolutely one of the best, most comprehensive and timely books that I've ever read about our information landscape. I cannot recommend it enough. I've just listened to this podcast, which comes from the podcast Thinking Clearly, and it is an interview with Renee called How Internet Influencers, Algorithms, and Crowds Are Altering Our Politics, Our Society, and Our Very Relationship to Reality. And so that's Geek of the Week 1. And then number 2 is that I have agreed to take over the Media Ed Club for the Media Education Lab. Invisible Rulers, Peggy, is the name of the book. Invisible Rulers, The People Who Turn Lies into Reality, Renee DiResta. The link I just dropped in is to the Media Education Lab's Media Ed meetings for that club. Those are the first Monday of each month at 12 Eastern, whatever that happens to translate to in your neck of the woods. We did a wonderful session. Well, I'm biased, but on Google LM, thanks to Dr. Neiffer, that was really well received. We had over 30 folks in the room. I think it might have been the largest meeting that they've had in at least a while. And so this session is going to be right before the election, Monday before the election. It'll be very timely, and it's going to focus on Renee. So I've got some links there in the registration. It's free to register on Zoom. I've got a video interview that she recorded back in August with Francis Fukuyama, talking with him, and then a link to the book itself, and then some other videos. So really excellent stuff, and encourage you to check that out. Yes, Peggy, there are recordings. I will eventually have access. I can. What are you on? I'll send you one with Facebook. I'll send you the link, and I'll post it on Mastodon and other places, because it's not on the page yet, but it is recorded, and it's on YouTube. So, and if you Google Media Education Lab, you may be able to find it, but I will put the link up there. So, Dr. Neiffer, where can folks find you when they are not here listening to you live on the show?
You can find me at AICenters.com, and if you're looking for me on social media, the best place to find me, LinkedIn.
Okay, awesome. And I am Wes Fryer. You can find me at wesfryer.com. My favorite channel at this point is, well, I like Facebook a lot, but I also really like Mastodon. So you can find me there. And Peggy, I have managed to find the link, so I'll drop it in here and I'll put it into our show notes as well. That's the archived YouTube of last month's meeting. So this has been the EdTech Situation Room for October 23rd. We've gone over 8 minutes, but we appreciate Peggy joining us and our other live viewer who is nameless, but could be my father. We don't know. We're happy to have you join us live. We'd love for you to join us live. So normally we're here at 9 p.m. Eastern and whatever that correlates to you in your neck of the woods on Wednesdays. But we are streaming not only to YouTube, but to Facebook as well. And you can always go to edtechsr.com and download small MP3 versions of audio as well as video. We are a bit behind on our episodes, and I will try to talk to that Slacker who lives here in Charlotte, who just hasn't posted all of those. But the good thing is they're automatically archived on those platforms. So we encourage you to stay savvy, stay safe, consider setting up a passkey, and we hope to see you next time on the EdTech Situation Room. Have a good night.
Good night.